What is up, everybody? I am Django, and today we are going to talk about the Division 2. I don't know if you could tell that or not. The Division 2 is a game. It came out in March to, honestly, quite a bit of fanfare. Critics seem to like it. Fans seem to like it. Most fans, rather, seem to like it. That's a very important distinction because of what we're going to talk about today. And over the course of the last few months, it's lost players. People aren't happy. There's been a lot of discussion about the game. We just got Title Update 5 and Episode 1, so it was the first episode with new DLC, and Title Update 5 made a lot of skill fixes, buffs. Basically, they made skills pretty damn usable and awesome. If you want to know more about that and my thoughts on it, there is a link down below, so you can go check that out. But other than that, that's not what we're here to talk about today. Today, I want to talk about what is going on with the game right now and what I believe needs to be fixed first, or next, I should say. And the three main issues with the game right now, as I can see it from my perspective, are PvP and then gear and loot. And technically those are three different things because loot is dealing with the RNG and what you loot when you kill something, what you pick up, whereas gear is dealing with the actual issues with the gear itself. PvP is just a mess. So we're going to start with PvP. Mostly because I am not a PvPer in the Division 2. I never enjoyed PvP in the Division 1. I did some Dark Zone stuff, but mostly that was just to try to get gear set pieces because early on in the Division, that was one of the only places that you could get gear sets or that you could reliably try to farm them. And so I remember going in solo to grind PvE and try to dodge other players because I never really liked the mechanics of the PvP game in the Division 1. When Division 2 was set to come out, I remember being excited and wanting to try more PvP. I tried it in the beta and it was pretty cool, and I liked it okay, I should say. Played it a tiny little bit at launch, but what I realized very quickly was there was no reason for me to PvP. There was no reason for me to go into the Dark Zone. I don't enjoy PvP enough to make that a reason to go in the Dark Zone or to even play Conflict or anything else. So, yeah, unfortunately, I know PvP is a huge issue, and guys, gals, seriously, PvP people out there, I hope it gets fixed for you. I really, really do. It needs fixing, and I hope they do. You know, they've stated on multiple State of the Games that they are working on it. And so hopefully, I'm hoping that with Title Update 6, I'm hoping that's going to be PvP and gear loot changes. So unfortunately for this part of the video, I'm going to kind of leave it up to you guys. Comment down below what you think needs to be fixed to have PvP be great again, right? To give you guys what you want in regards to a PvP experience or the Dark Zone experience. I know a lot of people say that the Dark Zones are too small, that there's not enough people in them. I don't think that's going to change. I don't think there's any way that they can change the size of the Dark Zones at this point, at least not without putting in a brand new Dark Zone. So we'll see what happens in that regard. But anyway, the one idea I did have for PvP is this in particular. I need some reason for me to PvP, and even for PvP in general, I think they definitely need to add some kind of PvP-specific loot, right? Whether it be specific talents that are only activatable in PvP, or an idea I had that I kind of got from Star Wars The Old Republic, the MMO, is to have an entire line of gear that is for PvP that has a stat on it. You can call the PvE stuff like, say, campaign, and the PvP gear could be warfare, and that warfare tag on that piece with a level, right? Say it's warfare level 1, would give you a slight bump in damage versus players and damage resilience versus players, things like that. And then you could only get that in the Dark Zone or through Conflict. And in the Dark Zone, the NPCs very early on could drop up to, let's say, level 10, 15 warfare gear to kind of get you in, get you started, get you going. And then the other change that I would do with that PvP specific gear is when you kill another player, as always, they drop what gear, what loot they've already got on them. But also, I think the player should generate one RNG decided, created piece of loot that would be at whatever their warfare level is. And warfare level would work the same as it would Dark Zone level, kind of. It would be its own thing. You would advance up. You can't wear level or armor or use weapons higher than what your current warfare level is. And the way that you increase it is through XP in the Dark Zone. You would get a small amount for killing NPCs. This is the wrong hand. That one's blocked, so I got to do everything with my right hand. Giggity, that's what she said. But you would get a small amount from NPCs, and you would get substantially more every time you kill a player. And then you get that random piece of loot that drops, and let's say you're Warfare level 5 and you kill a Warfare level 20 character, well, then that player would drop a piece of level 20 gear that you could then equip maybe once you're level 17 or whatever. So go back real quick. You could equip gear maybe 1 to 3 levels higher than you or something like that, right? Otherwise you couldn't advance. So yeah, so that's about the only idea I have for PvP. For me personally, there needs to be a reason for me to go in to PvP, and right now there isn't. The last time I was in the Dark Zone was when the Pestilence launched, and that was specifically to go get the Pestilence. And once I got one, I haven't been in the Dark Zone since. And there's really no need for me to. The gear that I can get there, I can get anywhere. So that, for me, is the issue with PvP. But I do want to hear from you guys. Let me know down below, or reach out to me, pop into my Twitch channel sometime, and let me know your guys' thoughts on that. I would really, really appreciate it. So, gear and loot. Here we go. This, honestly, I believe is the biggest crux of the game right now, even bigger than PvP, because if they could wave a magic wand and fix PvP right now, it would be fun, and people would engage with it because it's better and because it's fun, but ultimately, the rewards that they would get are still shit, right? Because right now, gear and loot and RNG are so jacked up and so bad that there's really no reason to play any aspects of the game, including PvP. So even if PvP was good, we would still be having this issue. And gear and loot are kind of like a chicken and the egg situation, right? Like they both need to be fixed at the same time. Neither of them are more important than the other, but they're both incredibly vital to this game. The biggest problem with loot is the RNG, right? Loot would be the way that gear drops for you, whereas gear itself would be the way that gear works, right? The way that loot works when you try to wear it. Loot right now is garbage. The RNG is brutal, so if you're looking for one particular piece of gear, I think Marco Style did the math, I think it was like 1 in 240,000 or something like that for the ridiculous piece that he needed, or the ridiculously specific piece that he needed, I should say. Me, I need 1 pair of gloves. I don't even know if it can drop, but there's multiple reasons for that, and we're gonna kind of get into that because it deals with the gear problem. The problems with the gear is really just you've got talents that, like, you have to stack into defense, but then they give you bonus damage, which is just silly. I've never understood that. I do not want to go back to the firearm stamina electronics rolls, but I do think that the way that they've got the red, the blue, and the yellow kind of works in that way. They just need to rework some of these talents so that if you spec into red stats, you will be a better offensive player. Think of that as firearms, defense, and electronics, right? Or firearms, whatever it was, stamina and defense. Think of it like that. And right now, everything is cookie cutter, right? If you stack a bunch of armor, you do a bunch of damage. Okay, cool. I'm not actually forced to go into anything at that point. So by fixing those issues with the gear, or these issues with the gear, it makes loot more exciting and loot better. But there's also a very, very particular issue with loot concerning drop chances that we're going to get into that I think definitely needs to be fixed top, and that is loot reward systems and difficulty tiered loot rewards, right? Do better, higher difficulty level content, get better rewards. That needs to be in this game as soon as possible. It is ridiculous right now that you can run around the streets of DC, kill a red bar and have seemingly the same chance of getting a plus 12 pair of gloves as you do if you go into the raid and kill Boomer. Like, that's just absolutely ridiculous to me. So we're going to get into that too, because I have a solution for that. I don't know if it works. And before I say any of this stuff, I have no idea what it takes to program or develop a video game. I really don't. So these are just my ideas, top of my head. If anybody at Massive sees this, please know that I respect you guys as developers. I think you guys have an incredibly difficult job, and I don't even know what goes into that. So these are just the random, mindless blabberings of some dude that thinks he knows something. And so I don't know, maybe it could help, maybe they could be cool ideas though. Yeah, so I think that in the fixes that I've got the idea for, I do think that they'll be good for the game. I think they make loot, or they could make loot exciting without breaking the game and making loot irrelevant, because that's a big deal, man. You can't make loot irrelevant. It is right now because none of it's good, but you can't make it all good either, because then none of it is worth it. So you have to have junk loot, and the system that I kind of want to do with loot definitely still maintains that theory, that idea. So we're going to start with gear fixes. And these, I know that there's much more drastic ideas out there on how to fix gear in this game. I'm not trying to go super drastic. I'm trying to give ideas that I think could be done relatively simply. Again, I've never programmed a video game. I have no idea what goes into it, but I think these could be done way easier than there's some people suggesting going back to the firearms, stamina, electronics system from Division 1, and that is a reworking of the entire coding of the game, I would assume. So these don't do that. I don't think these are that drastic, but I think that they're good changes, and I would think simple to put in. Again, I don't know, but they would make massively huge changes and be massively beneficial to everybody that plays the game. And number one is, I think the brand set restrictions need to go the hell away. Just bottom line, they need to go away. Petrov should drop in all 6 pieces, or in all 6 slots. Elps should drop in all 6 slots. Every brand set should drop in all 6 slots. That is part of the RNG and part of the loot problem that we have in this game right now, and part of the build diversity problem that we have in this game is that you are very limited in what pieces you can use in what slots. So when you're making a build, you need this piece here, and then if you get a better one, like let's say I need a Petrov backpack, but then I get a better Petrov holster, well, now I put that Petrov holster on, well, now I need a new backpack. And if I don't have a good, let's say I had an Alps Summit holster. I don't even know if Alps makes a holster. I was trying to think of another one, but it didn't pop in my head right now. But then, if I need that for a backpack, now I need to try to find a different backpack. And if I can't find that, well, that Petrov backpack was really, really cool, and now I can't use this other piece of good gear. It's just, it's an absolute junk system, if I'm being honest. I see what they were trying to go with those restrictions, but honestly, I think it's just broken, and it needs to be fixed. And so I think removing those restrictions and letting all brand sets drop in all slots is step one to making gear great again, right? It would lead to more build diversity. You would be able to use more pieces and more slots and do more combinations, but that in and of itself isn't going to fix the issue. I do believe, really quick, I'd already mentioned talents need to be reworked. I think there's a bunch of talents that need to be reworked, so that's going to help too. So that would be number 2, is rework some of these talents. Number 3 is gear sets. Gear sets need to be focused. They need to go back to the type of gear sets that we had in Division 1, right? Division 1, they were focused, they were simple, they were plain, but they were awesome, right? Predmark, boom, you hit 10 shots, you add a bleed. Essentially, that's what it did. And then there were some minor buffs to it, before that. Striker, you build this, you build these stacks, you do more damage. Boom, simple, awesome. Sentry, hit headshots, land marks, get those marks, do more damage, right, with headshots. Like, those were simple, they were great. The gear sets in the game right now are far too specific in what is required to make them work, and it makes them completely useless for the most part, because if you need to check off 5 checkboxes just to make your gear set work, why am I going to do that? That's going to be useful in 20% of the situations I'm in. Whereas with brand sets, those bonuses are always there. I can rely on that every fight, outside of like a few particular talents that require things to happen. But I think you get my drift. I think gear sets need to be more focused, and in doing that, I also think that they need to be reduced to 4-piece sets. The 6-piece set experiment is stupid and does not work. I shouldn't call it stupid because nobody's work is stupid, but they tried. I get what they were going for, but honestly, classified gear sets in Division 1 ruined build diversity in Division 1 and completely destroyed high ends, and that's why I think the gear sets are kind of weak now, is because they didn't want that same thing to happen. But the problem is it went the opposite direction. They're just weak and they can't compete with high ends, so they just don't get used. So my solution for gear sets would be to focus them in. Don't have them have these ridiculous situational things, right? Do this, get this. That's the way that they should work. I also think if they do get knocked down to 4 pieces, that's going to add high ends in to be able to make hybrid builds, and which will lead to build diversity. If they don't knock them down to 4-piece gear sets, right? If they don't change those to 4-piece sets, then they really need to add talents to all of them, because that's another big reason why the gear sets are just kind of weak. So those are essentially my 2 ideas for gear changes, right? Or my 3 ideas, I guess, in gear changes is fix some of the useless talents, remove the restrictions from gear sets. You know what? On that note, another restriction that needs to be removed from gear sets is the fact that it seems like Gilligard rolls defensive attributes and stats more often than it rolls anything else, right? Then you have a better chance of getting a Wyvern wear with offensive stats than you do with skill. That all needs to go away. Every single piece of gear when it drops should randomly roll within the structure that they have built for attributes and talents and mods. Within that structure, it needs to be able to roll anything, so that I am literally only picking that particular brand set or whatever the brand set bonus it is, and not because Gilligard can get this and I can get patience on Gilligard knee pads and still be able to get 2 mods on it, but I can't get that with anything else. That's just, it's stupid, it's restrictive, and that needs to change also. Now, one of the fears with this system, or one of the negatives of this system that I have come up with, is this. This will actually increase RNG. Yeah, take a second, because increasing the RNG in this game would be a brutally bad mistake. If you remove all of these restrictions, then that means that every roll has a higher chance or has a lower chance of rolling with what you need. To combat this, I highly suggest a couple of things. One, when recalibrating, we should be able to recalibrate anything to anything, right? Any red, blue, or yellow stat should be able to be recalibrated to any red, blue, and yellow stat. I also think if things stay the way they are, if these changes were made, I also kind of think we should be able to reroll 1 attribute and 1 talent on any piece of gear. Because so many times, like, between the fact that the rolls are terrible, which I'm going to get into that in the loot section in a minute, but between the fact that the rolls are terrible and then most of the talents are kind of useless and stupid, or you get a Petrov piece that can roll with an active talent or like on the ropes, but if that's not for a skill build, where you're using that piece for the 10 LMG bonus, but you can't like get the benefits of on the ropes because you're not making a skill build, and you can't roll that off because if you're running unstoppable, the only other like active talent on a backpack is what is it, the one with the med kits, which won't let you run unstoppable. So that is my situation right now. I'm stuck with a Petrov backpack. It's the only Petrov piece that I can fit into my build anywhere because of the aforementioned restrictions, and I'm stuck with a dead talent because I can't roll it off, because I can't roll an active for a passive talent, and the only other active talent I would be able to use is unusable with unstoppable. So it's kind of a mess. We've talked about the gear set changes and the brand set changes I think that we need to do. Now we need to talk about loot, because again, my changes would actually increase RNG. However, I also have a system to kind of kind of work against that a little bit and push back. And I need to give huge props to Like a Hero on this, because this idea, I had an idea, and then his idea kind of really built into that also, and I'll get to that in a second. But starting off right here, right there, rather. I was pointing to the wrong direction because this is all backwards from when I normally stream. But anyway, this is my idea for how to kind of fix the RNG issue and make sure that the loot you're getting is worth the time that you're putting in, right? So on the left there, we have the 4 difficulties that we have in the game, right? Story and normal are about the same, and then we've got hard, challenging, and then heroic and raid. And the reason I put heroic and raid in together is, while I believe that the raid difficulty is actually harder than heroic, I do believe that there needs to be a way for solo players to be able to, solo or groups of 4, like smaller groups of friends, to be able to get the highest end gear and be able to grind for the highest percentage gear without going into the raid. I don't have a problem with the raid having exclusive loot. I think that's definitely necessary to give people incentive to go into the raid. But I do think, for the purposes of this spreadsheet, that heroic and raid should be grouped together. Now, what you'll see is I actually used gloves as an example here, because the number is smaller, it's simple, and I know for a fact 12 is the top point. So across the top there, we split it up by 1 to 4%, 5 to 7%, 8 to 10%, and then 11 to 12%. So essentially that would represent a roll. So let's say we go into story or a normal mode. We kill a dude, he drops a piece of loot. That gets randomly rolled. It has a 70% chance for those gloves to drop with a 1 to 4%. Not great. It's got a 15% chance of it dropping 5 to 7%. Not great, but it's still there. That chance of getting better loot is there, but you're also doing the easiest content in the game, which is completely soloable. And if these percentages change much, it would make story mode ridiculously easy to just grind, and so forth and so on. You see that going across the top. Meaning that if you go in, you get a 5% chance to still get a top drop from something in story or normal. And maybe those percentages change, right? Maybe it goes to like a 2% chance or something like that. But I believe that carrot needs to be there even for story mode, to be able to have that excitement factor of like walking up to a loot drop and being like, oh my God, I just got a 12, right? Like, how freaking badass would that be? So I definitely think that needs to happen. And then as you go down the difficulty, those percentages get changed, right? So if you go in to a heroic mission, right, you only have a 5% chance of getting a 1 to 4% piece. You got a 10% chance of getting 5 to 7. So essentially you only have a 15% chance of getting something 7% or under, which, let me state right now, I've got over 600 hours, 700 hours, something like that into this game. I think I've got 3 total pairs of gloves that are above 10%. That's ridiculous. I've done the raid. I solo challenging content with no issue. We've done some heroic stuff, and I've got 3 pieces of loot, 3 pairs of gloves that have 10 or above. So I don't think these percentages are that far off from what we should get. And then if you're in a heroic mode difficulty, you get a 15% chance of it being 8 to 10, but you've got a 70% chance of getting a top tier drop, which I think should happen. Even if this was only from the main boss, I would be okay with this system, because what it does, you already have all of the RNG for all the different brand sets, all the different attributes. Now we would be able to guarantee, or at least hedge our bets in the chances of our attributes having better rolls. And let's face it, right now we need that, because good rolls are constantly dropping. I mean, top tier rolls, best rolls in the game, best rolls possible, are dropping on vendors on almost a weekly basis, and that shit needs to stop too, by the way. I don't mind it happening every now and then. Like, there needs to be a reason that we go to vendors, but the system of like almost every week, it seems like there is a top in slot gear piece dropping on a vendor, and I have literally never gotten that to happen in the game in over 700 hours played. There's a problem with that, because I focus high-end content. That's what I play 90% of my time in the game and I still get crap rolls. So difficulty should have a much larger determining factor in the gear value. That's what this represents. And it's just kind of a starter. I'm kind of curious what you guys think of that. Let me know down below. Now, again, we had said with my changes to gear, my changes to loot, this would actually increase RNG, right? Making it harder for you to get that piece that you want. However, with this spreadsheet, you can actually kind of hedge your bets and make sure that the gear that you do get has a better chance of being a better piece of gear. Now, this is the part where Like a Hero's idea really feeds into this, and I think would be beautiful with the system that I've put, that I've suggested. And by the way, if you don't know who Like a Hero is, please go over to twitch.tv/likeahero right now. Click the little heart to follow him. He's amazing. He does a lot of PvP, but he's been doing a ton of raids and stuff like that. So go check him out, hang out with him sometime while he's streaming and whatnot. This was his idea. I got this while I was lurking in his stream one night. He said this idea, and it just meshed so well with everything that I wanted to talk about in this video that I actually reached out. I asked him if it was cool. I am going to put a link for his channel down below, so please go check him out, show him some love. He deserves it. But anyway, his idea was that each brand set would drop from a specific mission every week, right? So that, let's say this week on reset, Alps would drop from like Lincoln Memorial, Gilligard would drop from Jefferson Trade Center, maybe Petrov drops from Air and Space. So that way, if you need one particular brand set, and again, all the brand sets can now drop in every slot under my system. So that RNG is increased, but you can now go and hunt for those specific pieces that you need, or the particular brand sets that you need, and be able to hopefully get a drop that's usable in whatever slot you need it for, right? That would be amazing. And then that would rotate every week, so that way the next week, maybe Petrov is from Lincoln Memorial. That way you're not stuck. If you're really trying to get a Petrov piece and you didn't get it one week, you're not stuck having to take a week off. It's not like your build diversity or whatever is time locked now. But what it would do is it would allow people to play different missions instead of just having to grind the same mission over and over and over again. And you could even do this with gear sets. You could have, one of the gear sets drop from one particular invaded mission. So that way, if you're trying to grind that particular gear set, you can go do that. Yeah. I think I think that the combination of these ideas is freaking fantastic. But I want to know what you guys think. So let me know down below. If you like this, please do me a big favor and share it. Get it out there. We need more people talking about how to make loot, gear, and PvP good again, or great again, or just good in the first place if you think it sucked from the beginning, which I would disagree. But please let me know down below what you think. Share this if you like it. If you haven't hit like yet, I would really appreciate it if you would, because it would help me out. And if you ever want to join these conversations live, jump in over twitch.tv/IamJanko. That's where you find me 3 to 5 nights a week playing the Division 2, playing MLB, and I'm gonna add in some Madden, but Division 2 right now is my primary game, at least until Ghost Recon comes out. We'll see how that goes. But anyway, thank you guys very much for your time. I really appreciate it. I love you guys. You guys rock. Until I see you next time, please keep on living the dream.